You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi. Bad Egg is a hardcore band from Southern Ontario who came to my attention recently because of their cover of Fuck the Border, which you just heard. I loved the cover, realized the band is sort of from my general region and proximity. I got to chatting with them, and I am delighted to bring you a conversation with Stacy and Mitchell from Bad Egg. We discussed the band's formation, discography, touring, their cover, their love of Propagandhi, and more. Please enjoy this conversation with Stacy and Mitchell of Bad Egg and check out their music on Bandcamp at badegg.bandcamp.com or anywhere you stream music. It's really great, I promise. Go check them out. Please enjoy our conversation. Stacy and Mitchell from Bad Egg, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on.
We're delighted that you're here to make an episode for the podcast. I'm super pumped to chat with you both about your band, Bad Egg, but also your recent cover of Propagandhi's Fuck the Border, which you did recently. Stacy, I'm wondering if you can start off by just kind of introducing yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know kind of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Stacy. I am the vocalist of Bad Egg, and myself and my partner Chris, who's the lead guitarist, and our bass player Brian Scheid. We are the original three members. So we formed back in, I think we started practicing in maybe 2017. And then the band kind of came into fruition. We started recording into 2018, 2019, I think was our first release. So yeah, we've been going at it for a little bit.
Mitchell, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the listeners out there?
Hey, I'm Mitchell, and I play guitar in Bad Egg. I'm the newest member. I've been in the band for probably almost pretty well exactly a year now. So
awesome.
And so far, so good.
Cool. It kind of sounds like whenever I look at the release schedule for the band, it looks like there are kind of like there's like a 2019 era, and then there's like a 2023, 2024 era with like a little bit of a gap in between. So if I'm looking at the releases, it looks like a Serotonin Flush Demonstration and the demo, This Ain't No Yoke, are the 2019 releases. And then there's a flurry of activity in 2023 with Activism, Static Brain, Cold, Where the Vampires Hang Out, and Rare Animals, all released as singles. And then the newest release, Century Egg, is a new EP that just came out in 2024. Stacy, why don't you what are your thoughts on these this variety of releases that the band has made in the last 5 years?
Sure. So that big window really in a lot of ways is related to COVID. But so previously in 2018, 2019, it was just myself, Chris, the guitarist, Brian, our bass player, and at the time our drummer, Nick Shangus. So we were just a 4-piece when we started out. And it was definitely a bit different. You know what I mean? Like we've always been heavily influenced by hardcore and punk, but when you're a 4-piece, the writing is a little bit different, obviously, a little bit simpler. And we recorded our demo, which took an exceptionally long amount of time to come out. So then that's why it looks like there was a flurry of activity in 2019, but that demo was actually recorded in 2018. It just took quite a while to come out. And so by that point, we had been playing that material for quite a while, and we were ready to record new material. And so that was Serotonin Flush was our second release.
Fantastic. So Mitchell, are you on this brand new release, the Century Egg EP and the singles Rare Animals, Where the Vampires Hang Out, and Cold? Is that kind of where you come into the picture?
Yeah, I don't think I play on every single song, but most of my playing is like some leads here and there, some solos, and I think there's a couple songs that I played the full song, but it's just, we kind of recorded it remotely, really, for the most part. At least my part was I recorded all at home. So,
oh, fantastic. What is the touring for the band like? What is your live schedule and getting out there in the world kind of like these days?
Well, last year was probably obviously the busiest year that we've had to date. We managed to get over to the UK
Mm.
for a run, which was incredible. We played in Detroit a few times. My partner Chris and I actually live in Windsor.
Mm.
So the recording, like Mitch was saying, is a lot of it is done. We would come into town and record with our drummer who recorded the whole album. We would record some work. Then Mitch would add in his work. Brian would go down and record and that kind of thing. But Chris and I actually live in Windsor. So we are right across from the Detroit border. We spend a lot of time in Detroit and involved in like the Detroit music scene. So when we're playing in the States, it's typically Detroit that we're playing.
Well, I'm hoping that you guys can come over here to Buffalo where I am because we have such a vibrant local hardcore scene right now that
Yeah.
you all would fit in stylistically so seamlessly over here. Like our scene is awesome. So I'm going to make it my mission to make sure that Bad Egg gets over to Buffalo sometime in the not too distant future because you could do St. Catharines, Buffalo, Rochester, New York, and then like that would be like a weekend. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It would be the
That'd
raddest thing
be
ever.
rad.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. That is my goal. I'm
Wonderful.
committing to making sure that this happens, and I'm going to tell Bad Egg the name Bad Egg to the local people here in Buffalo. Um,
Sweet.
okay, so who is Bill Morton, who does your recording and mixing for the band?
Yeah, so Bill's the drummer on these recordings, and so he's the one we recorded actually in his basement. So he did all the recording for the music. We did it in-house just because it's one because of the distance and the difficulty in kind of getting together to record in any sort of formed fashion was a bit of a challenge, but also Bill was interested in taking it on and working on his recording skills. So he did that. He did a great job. So yeah.
That is absolutely awesome. Whenever you have an in-house recording, that just makes the process so fun.
Yeah.
All right. So, Stacy, maybe you can tell me a little bit about the band's like ethos and values. Whenever a band covers someone like Propagandhi, um, it says a lot about who they are as people, kind of where they see themselves within this society that we all find ourselves careening through at any given moment in our lives.
No kidding. Yeah.
And whenever I look at your releases, you have songs about like landlords, and you have songs about like social justice issues. And I'm wondering if you can just tell me a little bit about how you see like the mission and the ethos and the values of the band. Like, kind of tell me who you are as far as like the band goes.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think growing up in punk and hardcore, it's always been heavily influenced by the political climate or just the struggles of everyday life, and so we're definitely influenced by that. I know for myself, I've always had a strong sense of social justice. I'm a social worker. I work. I've worked in a lot of different areas. In education, you'll see that come through in some of the songs I work with students with special needs. So, very passionate about that. And I have a lot of issues with the education system and how, the rights of folks experiencing barriers, go through life. And so that's always been an influence on me. I have family, I have a sister with Down syndrome. And so that's
Me too.
always been yeah, awesome. It's the best. Well, she's the most wonderful human in the planet. But so that's sort of influenced my own personal sort of take and lyrics and just living, in that sort of environment as a social worker. There's you're surrounded by it all the time, and it's almost becomes an outlet, right? The band for kind of getting some stuff out that I may not be able to in a professional setting, come right out and say like the things quite as strongly as I do on record. But I think just that strong sense of social justice, being a woman in hardcore as well, growing up in punk and hardcore, that's I've always felt for the most part welcome, but there's been struggles and to this day there still is. So I think that has a big influence on the band as well. Being a femme identity in hardcore is has its own set of challenges.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and I'm finding myself being very intrigued by a lot of bands with women in like punk and hardcore and metal right now. Like some of my favorite bands right now are Svalbard from the UK.
Oh, good. Yes. Yeah.
Incredible band. Obviously, Spaced from here in Buffalo on
Yeah.
Revelation Records is incredible. There are so many great bands out there, and it makes me so happy now that whenever I go to shows, I am starting to see a lot more bands with women that I was not seeing when I was growing up, which is a thing that Propaganda pointed out about the punk scene throughout the entire 1990s about the like the gender discrepancies on stage and things like that. So I'm really glad to see some trajectory and forward motion and progress on that because what is a scene if everybody up on stage is just like, all guys, forever.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for me it's like I would love to get to a point where it's like a non-issue anymore, to see women in heavy music. I think I still have people come up to me at shows like younger women, younger queer folks that are like just so happy to see some kind of representation and for me that's important. But yeah, I think I'm always shocked when I hear that because in my mind I see so many women and queer folks in hardcore and punk now, um, but it's still not out there in the capacity that maybe it should be.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let's chat about Propaganda for a second. Um, Mitchell, how did you hear Propaganda for the first time? Do you remember when you came across them in your life?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact year or anything, but they've been one of my favorite, probably my favorite band since I was 12 years old. Let's just say that. So I remember coming across, at that point, and when I was 12, it would have been about 2002. So, the newest release would have been Today's Empires, and at that point, it was all LimeWire. I was downloading track by
Same.
track, and so
Yes.
so I didn't know albums or anything, and there's no way to get them. I lived out in kind of a rural area at the time, so but this song in particular, "Fuck the Border," I do remember hearing that for the first time, and it was kind of the first probably hardcore song I ever heard because I found them, listening to NoFX and Rancid and all that stuff, and then Propaganda stuck out to me for whatever reason. At that point, I don't think it would have been the lyrics or the politics or anything. I mean, I was 12, but
Yeah.
the music stood out to me, and to this day, they're still definitely my favorite band, actually. So that's cool.
Nice. Stacy, what about you?
Yeah, I guess again, it would have been Today's Empire, Tomorrow's Ashes. I was a little bit older than that. I would have been in 2002. I would have probably been 16. And I had been into punk for a while. Like I had, my cousins, older cousins that got me into it. I was going to Warp Tour when I was like 14. Um, but I
Lucky.
think Propaganda was the first sort of band where it had more to it than just so at that point, you're 16 and you're starting to come into your identity. And I think at that point, Propaganda had a lot more content in their lyrics to me than a lot of the other punk bands that I was listening to at the time, like your NoFX, your, those kinds of bands. And, which are all great, but there was something about Propaganda that really um, meant a lot more, I guess I want to say. Like there was just they were speaking to things where I was like, yeah, that's super wrong, and I'm seeing it, and yeah, it just felt like there was more content to what they were doing, and musically, they're in my mind and to this day above and beyond, punk. They're just so great. They can do anything, and I think that's why I enjoy them so much.
Stacy, do you have any standout memories of seeing the band live that you wanted to share?
So I truthfully don't think I've seen them live since it's probably been at least 10 years since
Hmm.
I've seen them live. Um, but I do
Missing
remember,
out.
I do recall at the time, it would have been in Toronto, and I can't think, to be totally honest, where I saw them at this point. But I went with some friends who were fans of Propaganda, but perhaps didn't weren't really listening to the lyrics. And I still remember they're great friends and they've grown a lot too, but they were super involved. They're Christian and identified as such. And I just remember um, when they were speaking at the concert, they were like, "Oh wow!" Like they were kind of like I so vividly remember that because like their faces the whole time was just like in this guffaw, and in my mind, I was like, "How did you miss this? How did you not pick up on this? How did you not think this was going to be a thing here?" So I guess that's probably my most recent and kind of the funniest memory I have of seeing Propaganda.
Yeah, that reminds me of like when like American Republicans say things like, "Oh, I love Rage Against the Machine so
Yeah.
much." And
Yeah.
I'm just like, the cognitive dissonance that you live in it permanently in your
Yeah.
life is impressive at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
That one baffles me.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Mitchell, have you gotten to see Propaganda live before?
Oh yeah, every time they come around, I go to like the last time they were around here, they played what 4 shows. One was in Guelph and London. I
I
went to
was at
both
both
of
of those.
those. Yeah, I was at both of those too. I didn't go to the
Nice.
Toronto ones because they're weeknights and nobody really wants to go to Toronto anyways.
Right.
But yeah, I see them every time they come around. I don't think I've missed them since probably 2007 when I first saw them. I was
Hmm.
17, and that was a life-changing experience for sure. I think they were still a three-piece at the time. They were still touring up Potemkin City Limits, and remember that one well. It was in Hamilton at the Underground,
Mm.
and I remember it was probably the winter or some sort, something like that. And I remember the ceiling sweating, just dripping down. It was so, and that was probably one of the first bigger bands I ever saw. Actually, being only about 17, I lived in a small town, so I never really got around to stuff. So that was life changing for sure. I
Nice.
remember someone, I can't remember what it was. Someone jumped up on the stage. It was part of the show with a McDonald's milkshake or something costume on, and it was Skinny
McShake, yeah.
McShake. And yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I love the McShake shows. Whenever you come across those on YouTube and stuff, it is absolutely hilarious to watch Chris come out in like full shake or like dressed as like Ronald
Oh, was
McDonald.
it Chris? I don't even remember.
Oh yeah, like Chris comes out. He went through a thing where he was dressed as like a milkshake for a bunch of shows, and then dressed as Ronald McDonald for others. Like, man, that's a lot of effort to go through before the show, to commit to for like 75 minutes. But those shows in Guelph and London that you mentioned, I was at both of those, and they were both tremendous. And the thing that stands out
Oh,
to me about the
absolutely.
Guelph show was that they played apparently I'm a PC fascist track one from Less Talk More Rock, which
Mhm.
I had not seen them play that ever. So that Guelph show was super special to me because they busted out this old Less Talk More Rock track that just doesn't get a lot of action these days.
Yeah, it's interesting to see some of the stuff over the years too. I remember way back in the day, everyone used to be screaming, ska sucks," and they would
Yeah.
just say, "Yeah, ska really does suck," and then they never played the song, of course, and now no one does that anymore, and people are more interested in the newer material, which is kind of nice to see because you listen to a lot of bands or you go to see a lot of bands, and you're only expecting to hear the old stuff, so
Hmm.
it's nice to see
Well,
the crowd change.
I mean, I'm sure for you all as a band, if you're only getting a reaction from songs that came out in 2019, that's no fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of squelches the creative process. So I personally am not really into like legacy acts. Like if I see a band, for example, like a Fat Records band that was huge in like the 90s, but has since continued to put out records, but then go on to just play all the songs from 1996 and 1997 over and over when you've got 8 records after that, that just bores me to no end. So I'm glad that people appreciate the growth and the trajectory of the band beyond just those first 2 records. It means a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Especially so much, especially with propaganda, how much they've grown since then too. So,
All right, let's go back to Bad Egg. Recently, I found your band because of your cover of Fuck the Border. Um, so Stacy, tell me why this cover was done and what the adaptation process was like on your end.
Okay. So we, like I was saying a little bit earlier, Chris and I spend a lot of time in Detroit. We've got to know, a lot of folks in the punk and hardcore scene over there, and they've become really great friends. And in chatting over there with some of our friends, they're in a band called Stunner, which is an incredible band that you should check out.
Sweet.
But they were chatting about iconic Canadian punk bands for them, and of course, Propaganda is like number one on their list. And so in chatting with that, Chris and I started to think, we knew we were going to be having a show coming up in Detroit, in a few months, and we thought we should cover a propaganda song because that's what they like. And then naturally, it just made sense that it was Fuck the Border because I don't know if you're super familiar, but for Canadians to cross into the US to play, we require a visa. And the visa starts at about $2,000. And they can still, in theory, deny you for whatever reason, if even with the visa. So it kind of just made sense that struggle and that like the difficulty in just crossing over and just playing music. Like we're not making any money. You know what I mean? We're making, $100 at the door, like split, amongst people. And so it kind of just came about that way because it made sense in our head that was kind of a funny cover to play in the US. And so that's kind of how it came to be that we learned it and practiced it. In terms of the recording process, again, it was recorded in Bill's basement. We originally had no plans to record the cover. It was one of those things where it was just something that we played at shows. But a lot of people kept telling us how much they enjoyed the cover. And we'd been playing it well over a year at the point where we were like, okay, maybe, you know what? In a way, it was sort of like a way to lay the cover to rest in our live sets because we had been playing it so frequently that it was like, okay, maybe we'll record this. And then again, we didn't really know what we were going to do with it, but we wanted to record it as kind of a way to be like, okay, we're going to record this and then now we're going to do something else, right? So again, it was pieced together. Our drummer recorded everything, and then Mitch and Chris laid, guitar and some bass tracks and sent stuff to Bill. And then I did the vocal recordings one of the times we were down. And it just kind of came together that way. And then we sat on it for a long while, not a long while, a while, and finally thought, okay, like with the political climate, it was like, there's something we can do here. If there's a way that we can contribute. And obviously, to the Palestinian defense is ultimately where we decided to donate money. But that was sort of the decision-making process. It was like, let's put this out. We don't want to make any money from it. We don't want to necessarily put it to record. So let's put it up on Bandcamp and see if we can get some funds raised for. We ended up going with what was called Labor for Palestine, which is a movement based out of Ottawa. And it's a defense fund for folks that are there putting in the work on the ground, protesting and making the issues known and just being, pestering in any way possible, just trying to get something done. And so that was the decision in terms of where to put the money. We had thought about, obviously, in an ideal world, we would want to do a direct aid situation. So we were looking at the Red Crescent, but in doing research and hearing stories about how bank accounts are being frozen and access to funds is being cut off, we thought, okay, is there another way that we can be of help, that we know that this money is getting somewhere and is helping in some way and not just frozen somewhere inaccessible. So that was the ultimate decision there.
Yeah. What has your experience been like? I mean, I know it's very difficult to talk about articulately, but what has your experience been like of watching everything unfold since October in the region over in Gaza?
It's alarming. It's just to see the human rights violation, the deaths, it's completely overwhelming. And I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to experience that as somebody here that is safe and protected and not being colonized and not being forcibly removed from my home. And so it's hard to articulate your feelings around it, but it's something that's important. I work with a lot of immigrant population in the city of Windsor with teenagers. One of the schools that I support at is a predominantly a school where we have different refugee programs. So we do have a high population of students from the area, and seeing their experiences and their fear for their families, for their families' lives, and just the scramble to anything that they can do to get family over here. It's yeah, it really hits home, right? And so for us, if that's the one thing we can do is offer our voice and a small amount of money like that we collect on behalf of that track, then it's something. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, well, and you're right across from Michigan, which currently had a primary for the upcoming presidential election, which the results were very fascinating for the amount of uncommitted voters
Yes. Yeah.
um, for the reelection campaign of our current president, because of this issue, because of Gaza.
Yes.
So it's been a really it's been a really tumultuous experience for me internally because I'm also a teacher myself.
Yeah.
I teach religious studies to high school students. So watching this uh, religiously significant place on the map um, go through this year after year, decade after decade, and to feel that the situation is arguably like more hopeless than ever with regards
Yes.
to an actual long-term sustainable plan. I'm just glad to hear how people are processing this situation, what people are doing to get involved, even in small, tiny ways that maybe in the grand scheme of things, we're like, oh my gosh, is this even going to make a difference at all? But
Right.
talking about it and doing something as opposed to doing nothing and not talking about it ever is far more useful. So I'm glad to see that your band is trying to do something and get involved out there as well because it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Um, it's not. So um, thank you for telling me that story too.
No problem.
Okay, so Mitchell, as the guitar player in the band, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the musical performance of like Propagandy's version, like what you learned or any like standout memories you have of like actually learning the song, performing it. What stands out to you about the music?
That's a hard one because I don't remember learning it. I think I kind of just started playing it along with the rest of the band because they were already playing it live by the time I joined. So I was just kind of sitting back and like, oh, I know this song. They're my favorite band. I'll figure it out and just pretending to play it for a bit. And then I actually went home and probably learned the little bits that. But I mean, musically, it's definitely not one of Propaganda's most difficult songs,
Hmm.
but it has it at least technically, but it does have that impact of it. It has a big it just hits you right in the face.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why they still generally I think they still have it in their live set nowadays just because it just has that impact and it's a good one.
Yeah, I got to interview Todd about this song as well for an episode a while back, and it was originally an I Spy song that he
Yes.
brought over to the band when he joined, but it also had a different original version, which I don't know if you've heard the demo version that came out on the 2021 Today's Empire's reissue, but they used to sing the chorus differently,
Yeah.
and so it's awesome to hear the progression and the way that this song has changed and developed over time too, into becoming like basically a stone cold classic that it has become within the Propaganda discography.
Absolutely.
Um, do either of you two have any favorite lyrics in the song that really stand out for one reason or another?
I think for me it's that breakdown where it's like it's about fucking time, treat people with
Mm.
respect. It's our culture of consumption that makes our lives unbearable. Um, that one really hits home for me because it really it truly, when I look at a lot of issues that I see, that culture of consumption is so influences everything. It influences, poverty levels. It influences this sort of idea of like we've been sort of bred into this culture where we have to spend money, have to have all these things, and it really does. In the long run, I think it hurts people because you're spending money that just isn't there. You know what I mean? And so just keeping up appearances, and it just feels like, yeah, I don't know. It's that's definitely a line. I really, and when I sing the song, that's a really powerful moment too, because the music sort of cuts out in the background and it's really just me, with a little bit of guitar and, you know, a couple crashes or whatever. So I think that's a really important part of the song there.
Yeah, what's super interesting too about that line is if you think about the practicality of it on the ground, what it looks like in real society, um, the United States has this need for people from elsewhere to come and work on farms all across the country. We know who takes those jobs. We know who doesn't.
Yeah.
We know how much we need to feed the population, and we know what it takes to get those crops harvested, right? So then you have this thing that every single person in society benefits from in the form of an affordable, uh, immaculately packaged product that gets arrives on our store shelves that everybody goes to get every single weekend at like Wegmans or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have this other facet of society that just vilifies the people that are actually doing the physical work
Yes.
involved in putting those clean packages on our shelves every single day
Yeah.
nationwide. And I know I've said this term before, but it's like this cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
of being like you could be eating these like organic strawberries or whatever and
Yeah.
being like and watching a certain channel on television and being like,
Yeah.
these people blah blah blah. So it's really interesting to hear about the culture of consumption a lot. I'm glad that you
Yeah.
brought that up because it's something that I think about often whenever I go to the store, and I wish that everybody would think about
Yeah.
because there's human beings behind those packaged goods.
Absolutely. Living in Windsor, Essex as well, we're one of the main manufacturers of produce. Leamington is it's the warmest place in Canada essentially year round. So we do have a longer growing season, and we just have so many issues with migrant workers and just the way that they're treated. We actually have our own division in Windsor of human trafficking law and looking around that in terms of migrant workers because there's such an issue with human trafficking with amongst the migrant workers. So that's another reason, you know, too. It really does hit home.
Yeah. Mitchell, do you have a different favorite lyric that you would like to bring up?
I don't particularly have any lyric to bring up, but I just wanted to add to that. I do work in a lot of I repair doors, overhead
Mhm.
doors for a living, and so I go to a lot of farms and stuff, and I have seen some pretty wild things with migrant workers, like them
Mm.
living in these little tiny shacks and just some of the disrespect. And I've talked to farmers and they're like, oh, we got these guys from this island over here. Our church found them, and they're really small, but they work harder than the other guys, and that
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's like
wild.
the bragginess. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's like almost like a bragging of like who you have found to come and work on your farm and like talking about them like they're like almost like a zoo sideshow, you
It's
know?
almost like you're watching their pockets actually physically get bigger as they stand there and smile, and
Yeah.
it's pretty wild.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I love hearing about the way that this song connects to you all as musicians in Canada. Like I remember talking to Shane Told and Billy from Silverstein, and they covered this song for Record Store Day 7 inch years ago. And Shane and Billy both told the story of like why Silverstein covered it. It's like kind of like a bigger band that tours internationally.
Yeah.
They're dealing with border stuff nonstop in like bigger vehicles, like tour buses with big trailers and stuff like that. So they had an interesting perspective on this tune. I love hearing about the way that, a band that will play like Amy's Place in Buffalo, like a cafe where you're like performing on the floor.
Yeah.
How you are held to this like standard of it's like a big fence, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To keep you from coming over and doing normal things in like a venue that'll hold 50 or 75 people. um so that's interesting, and I also loved hearing about your work in social work. And then Mitchell, I love hearing your story about seeing migrant workers with your own eyes and seeing how people talk about them. It's so fascinating the way the Propaganda is a band that their music connects to everybody in so many different ways. Um, and what it makes us think about from our own lives. That's been my favorite thing about making this podcast for the last 3 years is seeing the way that every single song is an Easter egg that just opens up into a new world of like thoughts and experiences in our own lives. Well,
Absolutely.
Stacy and Mitchell from Bad Egg, shout out some links. Tell people where to find y'all if they want to check out what you're doing and follow along.
Well, so you can find our music on all those wonderful streaming platforms, Spotify, iTunes. Bandcamp has its own issues, but we do see the most money on Bandcamp for anything that we do. So I always like to plug our Bandcamp account. It's just bandcamp.com/badegg. And you can find our stuff there. You can find us on Instagram. I think it's badegg_hardcore. And that links to our Facebook page, which is relatively inactive, as most Facebook pages are these days. And our contact info should be right on our Instagram account as well. So if you ever want to reach out to us, we welcome it. And I know myself and Chris typically are the ones that are handling the communication on social media. So if you ever have a question for us, if you ever want to chat, just send us a message. We love chatting with people. So
Fabulous. Well, I am loving the new EP. So I'm going to thank you both individually. So Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me for Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Thank you. I did mention earlier, but I am a fan of the show. I have listened to a lot of the podcasts.
Amazing.
I'm not a big podcast guy. The only podcast I really listen to is you and Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. So I
what an honor.
it. So that's kind of why I came on to. I'm a fan of the show, so I thought I should come along for the ride.
Well, thank you for telling me that. I mean, it's a whole bunch, man. It's been an adventure the last 3.5 years doing the show. Glad we're still going strong. We've almost done every single song. We've only got a handful left, so I'm just like delighted by these little bonus episodes where I can get fans on who love the band to talk about this stuff. So I'm delighted that our paths managed to cross for the show itself. And Stacy, thank you so much for coming on Unscripted Moments podcast about propaganda.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's an honor to be on and just chat about it. It's again, I don't listen super frequently because my schedule is super chaotic. But when I do get to listen, I try and listen as well. And so it was really cool to be able to come on and chat with you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Bad Egg, great new EP. Everybody, links are in the show notes of this episode if you want to go and check out all of the fantastic Bad Egg releases. I have listened to every single one of them in the last 2.5 weeks or so, and it's bangers front to back. So everybody go check out Bad Egg. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.